She woke up before the room lights shifted from night blue to morning white. That alone was unusual. Her species slept deeply, predictably, and always until the internal cycle signaled waking time. But today her eyes opened on their own and her mind felt alert, restless, almost curious. She lay still on the resting platform, listening to the gentle hum of the station walls. The interstellar research station floated in quiet orbit between systems, far from any planet, far from home. She had been assigned here for one reason only: her unmatched knowledge of xenobiology. She was calm by nature, careful in thought, precise in action. Or at least she had been. Something felt different, not pain, not sickness. It was harder to name. A warmth spread slowly through her core, not uncomfortable but persistent. Her breathing rhythm was slightly off, deeper than usual. She placed one long-fingered hand against her torso, just below the rib structure, and paused. Her heart rate equivalent fluttered. That never happened without stress. She reviewed the previous rotation in her mind, the way her kind always did when something felt wrong. Meetings. Data analysis. A long discussion with the human envoy about cultural misinterpretations of emotional bonding. That memory caused a strange tightening in her chest. The human. She had not planned that encounter to matter. Humans fascinated her species, but only academically. They were physically fragile, biologically chaotic, emotionally loud. Their cells aged unpredictably. Their hormones surged and fell without symmetry. Their social bonds formed too quickly, sometimes dissolving just as fast. From a scientific view, they were inefficient. And yet they survived everywhere. The night with the human had not been reckless. It had been deliberate, studied, and consensual. A cultural exchange, nothing more. Her people did not attach significance to physical closeness the way humans did. For her species, reproduction was a rare, planned event requiring multiple partners, precise environmental controls, and long preparation cycles. Casual intimacy carried no biological risk. That was what the data said. She rose from the platform and moved toward the medical alcove built into her quarters. The floor adjusted to her stride, recognizing her gait. The wall display activated automatically, responding to her presence. "Run full internal scan," she said calmly. The machine hummed softly as invisible fields passed through her body. She stood still, arms slightly raised, eyes focused on nothing. She expected the scan to return normal results and for this strange sensation to fade into nothing. The display took longer than usual. She frowned. Her species did not frown often. Facial expressions were efficient tools, not habits. This one came without thought. "Scan complete," the system said. She stepped forward to review the data. At first glance, everything looked normal. Organ density stable. Neural activity within accepted variants. No foreign pathogens. No tissue damage. She began to relax. Then she noticed the highlighted anomalies. "Explain markers," she said. "Cellular behavior deviation detected," the system replied. "Adaptive response exceeding baseline parameters." "Adaptive to what?" she asked. There was a pause, a very long pause. "Unknown stimulus," the system said finally. Her fingers tightened slightly. Adaptive response meant her cells were changing behavior. That was not how her biology worked. Her species prized stability. Their cells resisted change. That was why they lived long lives and rarely suffered disease. Adaptation only occurred under extreme, prolonged conditions, and even then slowly. This was fast. "How long since deviation began?" she asked. "Estimated onset 3 cycles ago," the system replied. 3 cycles, the night with the human, a memory surfaced without invitation. The human's warmth, his laughter uncontrolled and genuine. The way his skin reacted to touch, alive with tiny shifts in temperature. The way his breathing had synced with hers without conscious effort. She pushed the thought aside. Correlation did not mean cause. "Run reproductive system analysis," she said. The request was absurd, and she knew it. Cross-species reproduction was impossible. The genetic structures were incompatible at the most basic level. Entire academic careers had been built proving that fact. The system processed the request anyway. This time the pause was even longer. She felt the warmth in her core intensify, not unpleasant but unmistakably present. Her body was doing something without her permission. Analysis complete, the system said. She stared at the display. It did not say pregnant. It did not say not pregnant. Instead, it showed a series of unfamiliar patterns. Her reproductive tissues were active, not producing gametes, not preparing for a convergence cycle, but responding, communicating, sending and receiving signals that had never been observed in her species before. "This is an error," she said quietly. "Error probability, low," the system replied. For the first time in many cycles, she felt something close to fear. Not sharp fear, not panic. A deep, steady unease, like standing at the edge of a map where the data ended. She dismissed the display and leaned against the wall, closing her eyes. Her thoughts raced, breaking their usual orderly patterns. She reviewed everything she knew, every study, every rule, every certainty. None of them explained this. Her people believed the universe was predictable if studied long enough. Humans, she knew, believed something different. They believed chaos could be meaningful. That uncertainty was not always a flaw. She had always found that belief strange. A soft chime sounded. "Incoming communication," the system said. She hesitated before answering. "Accept," she said. The human envoy's face appeared on the wall display. He looked exactly as she remembered, eyes too expressive, posture relaxed in a way that suggested comfort rather than discipline. "Good morning," he said with an easy smile. "Or whatever time it is for you. I was told you wanted to review some shared data." Her body reacted before her mind did. The warmth surged again and her pulse quickened. "Yes," she said carefully. "I require clarification on several aspects of human biology." His eyebrows rose slightly. "That sounds serious." "It is," she said. Then, after a pause, "for me." His expression softened, concern replacing humor. Humans did that quickly. Emotional transitions that took her species minutes happened for them in seconds. "Are you okay?" he asked. "I do not know," she replied honestly. Silence stretched between them. Not uncomfortable, but charged with something she could not define. "I can come by," he offered, "if that helps." Her first instinct was to refuse. Distance was safer, controlled, familiar, but another part of her, new, insistent, and deeply unsettling, wanted proximity. Wanted answers that data alone could not give. "Yes," she said before she could stop herself. "That would be acceptable." After the transmission ended, she stood alone in the quiet room. The station's hum felt louder now, as if the universe itself was listening. She returned to the medical alcove and pulled up the data again, studying the unfamiliar patterns. Her cells were not dividing recklessly. They were not damaged. They were communicating, forming networks that mimicked human cellular cooperation models she had studied only in theory. It was elegant. It was impossible. She placed her hand against her torso again, feeling the warmth, the subtle rhythm beneath it. "I only spent one night with a human," she whispered to the empty room. Her body did not answer in words, but it did not deny it either. And for the first time in her long, carefully ordered life, she realized she was standing at the beginning of something no one in the galaxy had ever experienced before. She did not sleep after the human left her quarters. Not because of fear, but because her mind refused to slow down. Her species valued rest as a biological necessity, yet her thoughts kept looping, circling the same questions without resolution. The warmth inside her body remained steady, like a quiet signal that would not turn off. When the station lights shifted again to indicate the next cycle, she finally rose. Her movements felt different. Not heavier, not weaker, just more aware. Every step carried a faint sense of presence. as if her body was no longer a silent machine but an active participant in its own future. She reported to the Central Medical Wing as protocol required, not as a patient, but as a scientist requesting peer review. The medical wing was sterile, calm, and familiar, filled with softly glowing panels and floating diagnostic tools. 3 members of her species waited for her, their postures formal and attentive. They were elders in their field, calm and confident. They trusted data above instinct. She shared her scan results without commentary. Silence followed as the others studied the projections. Their eye membranes flickered as they processed the information. One of them adjusted the display, enlarging the adaptive cell clusters. "This pattern does not align with known pathology," one said slowly. "It does not align with known biology," another added. She stood still, hands folded, observing their reactions. She felt detached from the discussion, as if the data belonged to someone else. And yet every word spoken echoed inside her body. "State the anomaly origin again," the senior medic asked. She hesitated for only a moment. "Temporal correlation suggests onset after direct physical contact with a human." The room shifted subtly, not in sound but in attention. Humans were still considered biologically insignificant by many. Useful allies, clever engineers, emotional negotiators, but not a species that changed others at the cellular level. "Impossible," one medic said immediately. "Human genetic structures are incompatible." "I am aware," she replied. "That is why I am here." They ran independent scans, then deeper scans, then scans that required her to remain motionless for long stretches of time. Through it all, her body responded calmly, almost cooperatively, as if it understood what was being asked of it. The results did not change. Her cells were adapting, not rejecting, learning, not defending, mimicking certain human biochemical communication patterns while retaining their original structure. It was not infection. It was not contamination. It was response. "This resembles no known reproductive cycle," the senior medic finally said. "Then what does it resemble?" she asked. The medic paused. "Early-stage symbiotic integration." The words settled heavily in the air. Symbiosis was rare and carefully regulated. It occurred only between species that had co-evolved over millennia. Even then, it was unstable. Humans had not evolved alongside her kind. They had evolved separately, chaotically, on a planet that changed too fast and demanded too much. "And yet," she said quietly, "my body behaves as if it recognizes something familiar." The medical council requested isolation. Not confinement, but observation. She agreed without protest. Logic demanded caution. Her quarters were adjusted for long-term monitoring. Sensors were installed discreetly, tracking biochemical changes without restricting her movement. She was allowed to continue her work, though her schedule was reduced. As cycles passed, the changes continued. Her sensory perception sharpened. Colors appeared slightly more vivid. Sounds carried emotional weight she had never experienced before. When she reviewed research footage of human environments, she felt unexpected responses: comfort at images of shared meals, tension at scenes of isolation. These were not learned reactions. They were internal. She began recording private observations, separate from official reports, not because she wished to hide information, but because the data felt personal in a way she had never experienced before. Her appetite shifted. She sought foods with higher energy content, something her species rarely preferred. Her rest cycles shortened, replaced by long periods of focused alertness. Her emotional processing speed increased, thoughts branching instead of following linear paths. She understood with growing clarity why humans thought the way they did. It was not inefficiency. It was adaptability. The human envoy visited again, this time invited formally. He entered her quarters carefully, as if sensing that the space had changed. "You look different," he said, not unkindly. "I am different," she replied. They sat across from each other. She shared what she could, explaining the medical findings in simplified terms. He listened closely, his expression serious, the humor absent. "So you're saying," he said slowly, "your body didn't reject anything, it just learned." "Yes. And this learning started after he stopped himself. After that night." "Yes." He leaned back, running a hand through his hair. "Humans have a saying. You touch something long enough, you change each other. We usually mean it emotionally." She studied him. "Your species rarely separates emotion from biology." He smiled faintly. "That's true." They reviewed human medical theory together: epigenetics, immune tolerance, cellular memory, concepts her people considered inefficient shortcuts. Yet here they were, providing the only explanations that fit. Human cells were not designed to remain pure. They were designed to survive. And survival, he said, means cooperation. Inside the body and outside it. She felt the warmth again, stronger now, responding to his presence. Not attraction exactly, recognition. The medical council was not pleased. They requested suspension of further contact with the human envoy. The risk, they said, was unknown. The implications destabilizing. Her condition challenged fundamental beliefs about biological identity. "You are becoming unpredictable," one elder said. She met their gaze calmly. "So are humans, and yet the galaxy continues to function." That statement alone marked how much she had changed. Once she would have avoided such comparison. The council delayed any decision. Observation continued. As cycles passed, a new development emerged. Her body began forming a distinct internal structure, not a new organ. Not a growth, a network, a convergence point where signals gathered and redistributed. It did not consume energy aggressively. It balanced it. The system flagged it as unclassified. She placed her hand over the area, feeling a subtle rhythm that did not match her own. It was not a heartbeat. It was synchronization. She did not think, "Am I pregnant?" Not in the human sense. She thought, "What am I becoming?" The galaxy had always assumed humans were adaptable because they had to be. No one had considered what would happen if that adaptability was shared. And as she stood alone in her quiet quarters, surrounded by instruments that could measure everything except meaning, she realized something profound. This was not an accident. Her body was not malfunctioning. It was responding to humanity in the only way it knew how: by changing. The changes no longer felt subtle. By the time the next observation cycle began, she could sense them even before the medical systems confirmed them. Her body moved with a quiet confidence she had never known. Not strength, not speed, but coordination. As if different parts of her were finally speaking the same language. She walked through the station corridors and felt the presence of others more clearly. Not their thoughts, not emotions exactly, but patterns. She could sense when someone was anxious, when someone was calm. It was not instinct from her own species. It was something new, layered on top of what she already was. The medical council called another review. This time, humans were included. The conference chamber was larger than her quarters, designed for multi-species meetings. Light adjusted automatically for different visual needs. The air composition shifted slightly as humans entered, something she noticed immediately now. Her breathing adapted without effort. She took her place at the center. The human medical team arrived with careful expressions, not curiosity-driven excitement, but respect. They knew this was not a simple case study. This was history unfolding in a quiet room. Data filled the air between them, layered projections of her internal systems. The unclassified network glowed softly, branching but controlled. One of the human doctors spoke first. "We've reviewed everything you sent. This isn't pregnancy, not by any human definition." She felt relief she had not realized she was holding. "Then define it," one of her elders said, "because our definitions are failing." The human doctor nodded slowly. "We believe this is a form of adaptive resonance." The term meant little to her people, but she understood the idea immediately. Your cells, the doctor continued, aren't copying human biology. They're responding to it, like two systems finding a shared rhythm. Another human added, humans evolved in unstable environments. Disease, climate shifts, resource scarcity. Our bodies learn to treat change as information, not threat. She watched her own data as they spoke. The network pulsed gently, almost as if listening. One night of close contact was enough, an elder asked skeptically. The human envoy, who had remained silent until now, spoke softly. For humans, intimacy isn't just physical, it's chemical, neurological, hormonal. Our bodies exchange information constantly. She felt the warmth respond to his voice. So did mine, she said quietly. Silence followed. The council could no longer deny the evidence. Her condition was stable. Her health indicators exceeded baseline. She was not declining. She was evolving. Isolation protocols were lifted partially. She was allowed supervised interaction with humans again, though always under observation. The elders framed it as caution. She understood it as fear, fear of change. She returned to her work, but it was different now. When she studied alien life forms, she no longer saw fixed categories. She saw possibilities, adaptation curves, hidden flexibility. She noticed similar changes in her thinking patterns. Problems that once required strict logic now opened into multiple solutions. She could hold contradictions without discomfort. Humans called that creativity. One cycle, during a routine scan, the system flagged another development. The network had begun producing signals of its own, not random noise, intentional patterns. The human doctors gathered again, excitement barely contained. Her elders watched closely, wary but attentive. It's not a separate consciousness, one human explained. More like a bridge. A bridge between what? An elder asked. Between biological languages, the envoy said. Yours and ours. She listened, hand resting lightly against her torso. The rhythm beneath her skin felt steadier now, familiar. What does it want? Someone asked. The question surprised everyone. She answered before anyone else could. It does not want, it connects. That was the moment they understood she was no longer just a subject of study. She was an interpreter. The first test was simple. Human neural signals were mapped and translated through her network. Her body responded by adjusting internal chemistry, creating a response pattern that matched emotional recognition. She felt it happen. A warmth, yes, but also clarity, a sense of shared meaning. When the test ended, she exhaled slowly. You translated emotion, a human whispered. She nodded. Not exactly. I understood it. That night, alone in her quarters, she reflected on what this meant. Her species had always believed identity was fixed. You were born a certain way, lived within that structure, and died unchanged. Humans believed identity was built. Her body seemed to agree with the humans. Dreams began soon after. Her species did not dream often. Their minds rested cleanly, without narrative. Now, when she slept, images formed. Not memories, but possibilities. Humans standing beside her kind, not as diplomats or allies, but as collaborators at a biological level. No dominance, no loss, only shared strength. The next weeks passed quickly. News spread quietly through diplomatic channels. Nothing was announced publicly, but everyone important knew. Humanity was no longer considered biologically isolated. Some feared that, others saw opportunity. The council debated endlessly. Was this dangerous? Was it reversible? Should it be allowed to continue? She listened patiently. I am still myself, she told them. I have not lost anything, I have gained understanding. And if this spreads, an elder asked. She did not answer immediately. Then the galaxy will need to decide, she said carefully, whether difference is something to defend against or something to learn from. The human envoy visited her often now. Their conversations shifted away from data and into philosophy. He spoke of human history, of mistakes made through fear of the unknown. She spoke of her people's long stability and the quiet stagnation that came with it. "Humans change everything they touch," he said once, not proudly, thoughtfully. She met his gaze. "And everything that touches humans changes too." Another scan confirmed what she already felt. The network had stabilized completely. It was no longer growing. It was complete. Not a child, not a parasite, not a threat, a function. The medical council reached a decision. They would not attempt reversal. The risk was too great, not to her, but to knowledge itself. Destroying something this unprecedented would be an act of fear, not wisdom. She was officially classified as a new biological state, the first of her kind. When the session ended, she stood alone in the observation chamber, looking out at the stars. For the first time, the vastness did not feel distant. It felt connected. She placed her hand over her torso and closed her eyes. "I understand now," she whispered, not to anyone else but to the quiet rhythm inside her. This was not about one night. It was about what happened when a species built to survive chaos touched a species built to resist it, and neither broke. They changed. The station felt different to her now, even though nothing had physically changed. The corridors were the same shape, the lights followed the same cycles, and the distant stars outside the viewing panels had not moved any closer. Yet she sensed a shift, like a quiet tension that had settled into the structure itself. Word had spread, not publicly, not in announcements or broadcasts, but through careful messages and closed meetings. Representatives from other species began arriving at the station under the excuse of routine diplomacy. They were curious, concerned. Some were afraid. She had become something the galaxy did not have language for. She continued her work as normal. That was important to her. Stability, even now, mattered. But her days were filled with observation sessions, interviews, and questions that had nothing to do with biology and everything to do with identity. "What are you now?" one visiting delegate asked during a controlled meeting. She considered the question carefully. "I am still myself." "That is not an answer," the delegate replied. "It is the only honest one," she said. The human envoy remained close, though careful not to appear possessive or influential. He understood how easily others could misread his presence. Humans were still new to many species, and now they were connected to something unprecedented. He watched her with a mix of concern and quiet pride. Not because of what she represented, but because she remained calm through it all. "You're handling this better than most humans would," he said once, as they walked along a transparent corridor with stars beneath their feet. She tilted her head slightly. "I have learned from humans." That made him smile. The council of her people reconvened, this time with a broader audience. Observers from allied species attended. The atmosphere was careful, polite, and heavy with unspoken fear. The question was no longer whether she was stable. The question was whether she should continue. "There is concern," one elder said slowly, "that this state may represent a loss of biological purity." She had expected this. "Purity," she replied, "is a concept rooted in fear of change. Biology does not recognize it." Murmurs spread through the chamber. Another elder spoke. "If your condition can be replicated intentionally or accidentally, it could alter entire populations." "Yes," she said, "it could." "Do you deny that risk?" the elder asked. "No," she said honestly. But risk exists in stagnation as well. The humans remained silent as agreed. This was not their debate to dominate. She continued. "My body did not weaken. It did not lose its structure. It learned. It adapted without erasing what came before. If that frightens us, then perhaps the fear is not of harm, but of losing control." That statement shifted something in the room. Her people had built their civilization on predictability. Control was comfort. Control was safety. But control had also kept them unchanged for thousands of cycles. The council delayed its decision again. Outside the chamber, she felt a familiar warmth pulse gently within her. The network responded not to stress, but to attention. It was aware, in its way, of being discussed. She found herself speaking to it quietly now, not as a separate being, but as a part of herself she was still learning to understand. "We are being watched," she murmured once, alone in her quarters. The rhythm beneath her hand remained steady. She took that as reassurance. Soon, the first external request arrived. A species from a distant system requested a private consultation. They had encountered humans recently and noticed unexpected physiological responses among their population. Nothing dramatic. Slight changes in immune tolerance. Emotional regulation shifts. "They are afraid," the human envoy said after reviewing the message. "And curious," she nodded. "As I was." The council debated whether to allow her involvement. In the end, they agreed under strict conditions. Observation only, no physical contact. The meeting was conducted through layered force fields and remote interfaces. Still, she could sense the others' unease. Their biology reacted to humans in small ways already. Her condition simply made it visible. She explained carefully, slowly, without promise or threat. "This is not something you catch," she said, "and not something humans give. It happens when systems allow change instead of resisting it." "Can it be stopped?" one of them asked. She considered. "Yes, by isolation, by fear, by refusing interaction." "And the cost?" they asked. She answered truthfully, possibility. After the meeting, she felt a deep exhaustion, not physical, emotional, human exhaustion. The envoy noticed immediately. "You need rest." "I am resting," she replied. "I am just processing." That was another human concept she had adopted. Later, alone, she reviewed recordings of her earlier self, her posture, her speech patterns, her emotional neutrality. She did not feel loss when she watched them. She felt gratitude. That version of herself had brought her here. Another development followed soon after. The network began responding not only to humans but to other species as well. Not with the same depth but with recognition. It adjusted subtly during diplomatic meetings, easing misunderstandings, smoothing emotional mismatches. She became aware of it during a tense negotiation when voices rose and confusion spread. Without thinking, she spoke, choosing words that balanced both sides. The tension eased almost immediately. Afterward, multiple delegates remarked on the sudden clarity. "You stabilized the room," one said. She did not know how to explain that she had felt the imbalance and corrected it instinctively. The council could no longer deny what was happening. She was not a threat. She was a bridge. That realization terrified some more than any danger could have. If humans could connect at this level, if their adaptability could echo through others, then the old divisions of species, identity, and isolation would weaken. Not through force, through understanding. The final council session was quiet. The elders spoke less, listened more. One of them asked her a question no one had asked yet. "Do you regret it?" the elder asked. "That night, that change," she answered without hesitation. "No." "Even knowing what it has cost you," the elder pressed. She tilted her head. "It has cost me certainty, it has given me perspective." Silence followed. At last the council made its decision. They would not restrict her. They would not attempt to replicate her condition artificially. They would allow it to exist, and they would observe what grew from it, not control, observation. When the decision was announced, reactions across the station were mixed. Relief, fear, excitement, confusion. Humans reacted in the most human way possible. They asked questions. What did this mean for cooperation, for medicine, for diplomacy, for the future? She did not have all the answers, but she had something better: experience. She stood once more at the viewing panel, stars stretching endlessly before her. The human envoy joined her, standing close but not touching. "You've changed the way people see us," he said quietly. She looked at the stars. "You changed the way I see myself." He smiled softly. The warmth within her pulsed, calm and complete. The galaxy was still vast, still uncertain, still full of unknowns. But for the first time it did not feel divided. and that she realized was only the beginning. The announcement did not arrive with celebration. There were no lights, no music, no public speeches. The decision spread quietly through official channels, translated into dozens of languages, adjusted for cultures that valued subtlety over sound. Still, the effect was immediate. Everything slowed. Meetings paused. Travel schedules were delayed. Species that rarely questioned themselves began to do so, not because they were ordered to, but because they could no longer ignore what stood before them. She remained on the station. Many suggested she should move to a larger diplomatic hub, somewhere more visible, more symbolic. She refused politely. The station was where the change had begun. It was neutral ground, distant from homeworld politics and historical fear. Here, listening mattered more than authority. Her days became full in a way they had never been before, not with work alone, but with presence. Delegates asked not only scientific questions, but personal ones. What does it feel like? Humans listened differently than others. They did not search her words for danger. They searched them for meaning. Many of them looked at her with something close to recognition, as if she expressed something they had always felt but never been able to explain. One human doctor said quietly, "You're doing what humans do all the time. You're changing and still moving forward." She considered that. Maybe humans had never been fragile. Maybe they had always been flexible. The network within her remained steady. It no longer surprised her. It no longer felt separate. It had integrated into her sense of self so completely that she only noticed it when others reacted to it, like during the first joint medical trial. A multi-species team gathered to test a new cooperative diagnostic system, nothing invasive. Only shared data streams and environmental exposure. She was present only as an observer. At first, when confusion arose between two species with very different sensory priorities, the discussion stalled. Misunderstanding layered over misunderstanding. Voices grew tense, though still polite. She felt the imbalance immediately. Without planning to, she spoke. Not louder, not with authority, simply with clarity. She reframed the problem using shared concepts instead of specialized terms. She adjusted pacing, gave space where needed, summarized where confusion had formed. The room settled. Afterward, one of the researchers approached her. "We've been working on this for months," they said. "Why did it make sense when you explained it?" She answered simply. "Because I could feel where it did not." That moment marked a turning point. She was no longer just a symbol, she was a function. Soon she was asked to attend more meetings, not to decide but to translate, not language but intent, emotion, context. Where once diplomacy relied on rigid protocols, now it began to soften. Humans adapted fastest, as expected. Others followed slowly. Not everyone approved. Some species withdrew from contact with humans entirely. They reinforced isolation, restricted interaction, labeled adaptability as contamination. She did not argue with them. Fear, she had learned from humans, often needed time more than logic. The human envoy remained at her side through it all, though his role changed. He was no longer just a representative. He became a listener, a bridge in his own way. "You don't realize it," he said once, standing beside her at the observation panel, "but you've made humans less alone." She turned toward him. "Humans were never alone." He smiled faintly. It often felt that way. Another development emerged quietly without alarms or alerts. Human children, not hybrids, not altered, just human. But those who grew up near multi-species communities began showing subtle changes, not physical at first, cognitive. They learned languages faster, understood non-human expressions more easily. They did not fear unfamiliar forms the way older generations had. When studied, no genetic alteration was found, only exposure. Humans had always been shaped by their environment. Now their environment included the galaxy. This frightened some governments. It inspired others. She was asked whether this was her doing. She answered truthfully, "No, this is humanity being itself." The realization settled slowly across the stars. Humans did not conquer with weapons. They did not dominate through strength. They changed things by existing close enough to be understood. Her own people began to change as well, not physically, culturally. Young members asked questions elders had not considered. Why stability mattered more than growth. Why certainty was valued over connection. Why change was seen as loss instead of learning. The elders did not have easy answers, and for the first time in generations, that was acceptable. One cycle, as she reviewed old records of her species' history, she felt something unexpected: pride, not in what she had become, but in what she had allowed. She had not forced change, she had not resisted it, she had listened. The final moment came quietly. She was in the medical wing, alone, reviewing her latest scan. The network glowed softly, unchanged for many cycles now. Stable, complete. The system displayed a simple message: no further adaptive growth detected. She placed her hand over her torso and closed her eyes. The rhythm beneath her skin remained calm and constant, not fading, not expanding, present. Later she stood before the council one last time, not as a subject, not as a risk, but as a representative. "I will continue," she told them, "as I am. I will not seek to replicate this state nor prevent it. I will exist openly. Let others observe and decide for themselves." The council agreed, not unanimously, but enough. When she left the chamber, the human envoy waited for her. "So," he said gently, "what happens now?" She looked out through the station's wide viewing panel. Stars stretched endlessly, no longer distant points, but connected places. "Now," she said, "we see what happens when understanding is allowed to grow." Humanity's classification was updated soon after. No longer merely adaptive. She stood quietly, hand resting over the steady rhythm inside her, and thought of that single night that had started it all. Not as a mistake, not as an accident, but as a moment of openness. And across the galaxy, slowly, carefully, the stars learned something new about humans. They were not here to rule, they were here to connect.